was born in Chernovitz, that's the city in the province of Bukovina in Ukraine, January 22nd, 1941. Chernovitz was under, until 1940, from 1918, that means after World War I, until 1940, Romania occupied those provinces. Now, the Russian came in 1940, and they kicked the Romanians out of it. And I was born 1941 under Russian occupation, yeah. So my passport, really, the birth certificate, was Russian. When I was 2 months old, my father was drafted by the Russian, at the time, the Russian army, to fight the Nazis. And the train that he was on, the transport that he was on, was bombed by German bombers, and he never survived. 7 months later, the Romanians came in with the help with the Germans, of course. They kicked out the Russians. They took over. And that's when they created a ghetto in Chernovitz, which was the largest city in that section of the world. And at 10 months old, we were transported, herded in cattle cars, into a province that's called Transnistria. Transnistria was created at a time for annihilation of Jews. 16,000 square miles of that province, which include approximately 132 villages and towns in that province. And they knew why they picked, the Romanians knew why they picked Transnistria, because they knew the Ukrainians hated the Jews just as much as they did. It was isolated in a way. You had rivers on both sides. You were surrounded by rivers and surrounded by towns that were hostile to the Jews. So you couldn't escape. Let's put it this way, you couldn't escape. Just crossing the border, the river, when we got into Transnistria, many were gunned down by machine guns at the riverside. And the ones like we did, we crossed the river, and we crossed them with, barges and rafts and all those. We survived by crossing the river, of course. We were driven to walk, marching, from town to town, village to village, just for the sake of exhaustion, so people will die without using any bullets, I guess. And that's when many people died on the way. And most of the people in those towns, most of the citizens that lived in those towns, they didn't do much helping the Jews either. They shut their doors. The only time they did is when, from desperation, when some people exchanged their clothes for some food. And they died of cold. Same people who exchanged their clothes for food, they died of cold, which at night it used to, in the winter, it came down to 40 below zero. Most people died of cold, frost. I was still a baby. My mother used to carry me, and when she tired, my grandmother took over. So between my mother and grandmother, that's how I survived. I have a little story about my mother in desperation of food. One night she snuck out into a nearby farm to find any scrap of food that the pigs left behind them. A German soldier found her and hit her over the head with a rifle. He probably left her for being dead, you know. She survived it. But she died with the lump on her head all her life. There were times in Transnistria, they had big amount of people. Well, some dug a big, huge hole, which is a grave, and a big amount were shot. The ones after they dumped those bodies into the big grave, they were shot after their job was done. So there were a lot of killing by digging their own graves. It was the largest killing field territorially in the Holocaust. It's funny that when I speak to children and, you know, to students in schools, and there's always somebody ask me, how did you survive all that? And my answer was always, I don't know. I guess it was a miracle. And later on in life, it came to me that the only reason it came true, really through a dream. The only reason I survived, I feel now, because I'm the only one left from my father's side of the family.